So again, thank you everybody for joining us. This is a panel discussion on AI in the workplace. I'm going to give a chance for all of our panelists to introduce themselves. First, I'm just going to start by letting you know who I am. I'm Emil Kressel. I'm the Director of Learning Development, and I'm going to be moderating discussion. I might have one or two things to say to contribute to the discussion, but mostly I'll be asking questions and facilitating discussion. And just to give you some idea of the sort of genesis of this event, obviously a big reason why is the Year of AI. Those of you who are joining us from UT know that that's a major initiative here at the University of Texas at Austin. And the primary focus of that initiative, understandably, is focusing on the academic side of AI and research side of AI. And so we wanted to really kind of highlight how AI is also having a heavy influence in the workplace, especially at the University of Texas. So we assembled these brilliant people to sort of talk about how AI is influencing and might influence in the future our workplace at the University of Texas and beyond. And that's what this is all about, sort of starting to spread the Year of AI into the employment side, employee side, and the workplace side, and helping people know that it can be a big benefit to their work, but also to hear from you, the people who are attending, to hear what your thoughts are, what maybe some of your concerns are, and what some of your ideas are. Let's start by having all the panelists introduce themselves to the audience. And Cole, if you're okay, could you start us out? Just let us know a little bit about yourself and your interest in AI.
Sure, Emil. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. This is really exciting. Full Camp Lease, I'm the new Vice President for Technology and Chief Information Officer here at the university. My interests in AI are relatively diverse, but I mean, I would say that in my lifetime, for my generation, this is really the fourth wave of fundamental technological disruption that I've experienced. The birth of the personal computer, the dawn of the internet, the rise of mobility, and now AI. Foundational and fundamental shifts, each one of those, and if you recall any of them in your lifetime, you know it changed everything from the way you purchased your airline tickets to the way you did your news gathering to the way you did your job. So I think we are really on the edge of really that fourth wave of technological and disruptive innovation.
Thanks, Cole. Mario, do you want to join us next?
Sure. Thanks, Emil. Hello, everyone. My name is Mario Guerra. I am a learning technologist. I lead a team under Cole's portfolio that is very much focused on how we use technology effectively on this campus, staff, faculty, and students. So my interest in AI is really focused on effective uses and how AI will make an impact on our work, on our teaching and learning side of the house, our research side of the house. But I think it's great, Emil, that you guys are focused on administrative use cases, business operations, because I do think AI will make an impact in that area. So kudos for you guys for coordinating this, and I'm looking forward to having the conversation.
Thanks, Mario. And I'll say too that, we are the, Learning and Development Office. So you can be assured that we're going to talk about how AI influences learning and development as well. So you and Julie in particular will have something to say about that. Julie, do you want to let us know your background, please?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I see some wonderful friends in the audience. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Julie Schell. I'm Assistant Vice Provost of Academic Technology, and I'm also Assistant Professor of Practice in the Departments of Design and the Program in Higher Education Leadership. And my interest in AI, it started out last summer when I was getting ready to teach my class, which is a MFA and master's and doctoral student class in higher education and in design pedagogy. And I realized that if I didn't figure out how to address AI in my class, that I was going to be doing my students a disservice. It felt like I had a moral obligation to do that. And Fast forward to today, I'm really interested, spent a lot of time digging really deep into AI, and I'm really interested in the paradoxes AI presents. I think AI is a paradox. I think you can kind of think of it in three ways. This paradox opens up like huge opportunities for unprecedented knowledge development and learning, but it can also give you fake news and false information. So that's definitely a paradox. It can really speed up your productivity and it can speed up your thinking. But if you rely too much on the output, it can actually diminish your cognitive presence and your cognitive abilities. So we have to be careful around that. And I think for my students and the folks I work with in arts and design, it can really unleash your creative potential, but it can also diminish your creative voice by limiting your DNA or your fingerprints that you put on it. So I'm really interested and fascinated by these paradoxes and how to help people, my colleagues as well as my students, find that sweet spot between being really AI forward and being AI responsible. And so that's what I've been working on.
That's great. Thanks, Julie. Melissa, do you want to go next for us?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here today. My name is Melissa Taylor. I am the Senior Assistant Dean for Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships in the College of Natural Sciences. Given the decentralized hub and spoke model of our university, much of what I work on in the College of Natural Sciences has scalability and coordination and connection to other parts of campus. And a big part of my role is thinking about helping organizations define their priorities and goals and then turning those into actionable strategies. And so as such, I was asked to help lead the Year of AI initiative that cross-cuts all of campus. And I'm interested in supporting this initiative and broadly as a higher education administrator in what the role of a public university could be and should be in regards to AI and its rapid emergence in the world.
Oh, that's really interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that in particular. And then Angela, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I am Angela Newell, and I work with Cole and with TAC on open source software development, which includes OpenAI, research compute, which you need if you're going to execute any AI, and I'm a quantitative researcher by training. So data and AI are passion points for me, and I am extremely excited to be helping campus kind of have a fundamental AI conversation that includes what is AI exactly? Is it robotics? Is it LLMs? Is it Wikipedia, or is it Netflix? What is it? Is it machine learning? What is hallucination and what does that mean for me? And then how do we find some really cool tools and employ them responsibly and well so that we can actually increase capacity? Super excited to have those conversations.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you all so much. We already have questions coming in. I want to, we're going to try and get to your questions as much as possible. We're at over 400 right now, 400 attendees, not questions. But I do want to try and just start out the conversation with some very broad questions. The first one, I think, kind of maybe a little bit of what you alluded to, Angela, in your intro. And this is open to anyone who wants to jump in first. What is the most misunderstood thing about artificial intelligence in the workplace?
For me, the most misunderstood thing is that it's new. You've been surrounded by machine learning for a long time now. Amazon's whole platform is a machine learning platform that identifies what you like and puts it all together. Same with Netflix. And LLMs are just a modern kind of, or the most current kind of AI tool that is exciting. And it's an extremely exciting field, but it's been around us for a long time.
I think everyone on this campus uses AI in their day-to-day functions, whether they realize it or not, because much of the platforms and software and tools that we use as an institution have AI within them. And I think another related misconception is that AI is an alternative to human intelligence, when in fact, I think it is a tool. I'll shout out to one of our faculty in the Moody College of Communications, Craig Watkins, who was recently featured on the Brene Brown podcast.
Listen to it. That was great. Highly
Yeah,
recommend
if you haven't
to
listened
that
to
one.
it, it's a
really
great
good.
kind of high-level overview of societal implications for AI and what's misunderstood. And he suggests that we might move to a place where we no longer refer to it as artificial intelligence, but rather augmented intelligence as something that is available to complement our decision-making, but not meant to replace it. And I think there's a little bit of a misunderstood fear that it will at some point take over or displace individuals.
So I'm going to give people an opportunity to add to that, but you mentioned, both you and Angela mentioned this misconception that it's new and how we already have been using it for a long time now. Can you give us some examples?
Well, here's a good example of AI that people don't think about. Like, as I move around in my office, this simple
The camera's
camera
following me.
has, it has the ability to detect human presence, and it recenters and autofocuses its intelligence mapped to software. When we do things like those are also AI generated, and those seem like silly
Do we have
little
one for this?
examples. We'll build one for that.
Yeah, make one.
We'll build that. That will be our contribution to the world of
To the
AI.
world.
Will be the hook 'em horns. I think what people mistake, and Angie continues to say it, LLMs, or large language models, are what have burst onto the scenes and captured the imagination and the consternation of so many, because our teenage children are doing their homework by asking a chatbot to be able to write, and it's looking at the tens of thousands, millions of pages of content. But that's relatively new, but the machine learning, the recommendation engines that we use for Netflix, our shopping on Amazon, all of those things have been in play for quite some time. And even if you think back in early higher ed days, at the dawn of the internet, when Amazon started to happen, I remember deans and provosts saying to me, well, why can't you just, if you pick this class, you should also pick these 4 classes. Right. And I think that one of the challenges that we have in higher education is that our data, the data itself that AI uses to make meaning out of it, to turn it into information, is not managed in a way that makes it as effective for those kinds of activities. Where we are today is now we understand that data is the fuel for great AI. Right. That's what really will generate meaning out of thousands of pieces of information. And I think the LLMs have caught the attention and the imagination of people to the point now where they're saying, wow, this could really be useful. On the surface it is, but under the hood, there's still a lot of work to be done for people on campus to see the kinds of things and application that are running wild in our imagination. But it's everywhere, in either big doses or tiny doses, to improve things that we do every single day.
Thank you. So I dropped the link to that Brene Brown podcast, and if you use abbreviations or any kind of jargon, if you could just kind of explain it, LLM, large language models, so put that in the chat. Okay.
I'm gonna follow up there.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that's really important is to have definitional clarity around the concept of generative AI. And one of the things that I find is that everyone can say these catchphrases and they can probably define machine learning, LLM, they can deep learning, algorithms, predictive analytics, they can say those terms. So when you ask people what AI is, they'll give you that response usually. But if you ask someone to tell you the difference between Siri and ChatGPT, or Alexa and ChatGPT, they're not as quick to be able to differentiate between those two. And I think that that's really important, because this base level understanding of assistive AI, which is something like Siri, or conversational AI, and something like generative AI, like ChatGPT, is really important because it helps you understand the problems of the output. And it's important to understand that the job and the goal of something like Siri is to be able to have a dialogue with you. And Siri produces far more factual information. But what something like ChatGPT is doing is that it is processing your request and it is generating a response that is what you can consider novel or new. It's not imagining, because imagining is kind of a term that only humans do, but it is taking all of its data and is producing original output that didn't exist before. And I just want to acknowledge Mario for a second, because when we were first digging into AI at the beginning of the fall semester, we were talking about these definitions, and Mario and our team decided to turn off the AI detectors in the plagiarism detecting tool for that reason. You can't tell when someone is, it's different than plagiarizing. Plagiarizing is taking something that already existed. Output from generative AI is original novel output. It's made on information that already exists, but it's novel output. And so we made academic policy decisions based on this deeper understanding of these definitions. And I just encourage everyone to try to dig deeper than the buzzwords.
I just want to iterate or reiterate some of the things that have been said, right? One of them is what Cole mentioned about how important data is, how important that piece, that layer is to these AI solutions, right? AI is not going to answer every question unless it has the data to understand and summarize and generate something new, right? So it's really important to understand where your data lives and how that is going to play into this solution or problem solving that you're doing with AI.
Yeah, I just want to say, to add on to that point, even, what you're calling your data. So Dr. Watkins mentioned this in the podcast that we referred to, like when you're naming your files, for instance, name them human things, so that when you are using AI, it knows what you're trying to say. So it's not just random, letters and digits, but something that AI might be able to understand. Those are the sorts of things that we have to start thinking about in the workplace, is how will AI, if we're using it, interpret this or understand it? And that's a whole new way of thinking as we sort of move forward with this.
So to expand on that, Emil, real quick, just to expand on that, right now we are doing an evaluation of Microsoft Copilot for M365, for Microsoft 365. So we've got licenses. These are additional cost licenses that will allow you to embed Copilot, which is Microsoft's AI solution, into your Office suite. So think about Copilot sitting in your Word application and helping you write, helping you rewrite. Think about Copilot sitting in Excel, helping you understand what formulas to use. Well, it's great, right? That's wonderful. But if you have all of your information stored in Box,
right,
useless, right? It's not gonna reach into Box and grab that information and help you summarize or categorize or theme that data. It doesn't have access to it. So again, coming back to that data piece, I think it's really, you really need to understand that layer of it, and it is layers.
So I want to get onto a new question. I did see one from Elizabeth Schaub asking about, and this is an important issue, it sort of aligns with what we were saying, how can we learn about creating effective prompts? You might have some answers to this too. LinkedIn Learning has a really good course on this. And for all you folks who are either staff, students, or faculty, you have access at no cost to LinkedIn Learning. And there's a couple actually, there's a whole suite of great AI stuff in LinkedIn Learning, but there's one specifically about writing effective prompts.
There's a framework for prompt engineering that is more general, and then there's one that's more specific. But I like the framework of persona. So when you're engaging with the chatbot, give it a persona. I'm an executive at a university and I need to solve X problem. So telling it who you are helping it understand the user. I'm a student who's trying to understand conflict. So giving it a persona, giving it context, so explaining the context of what you're working on, giving it an objective or a goal, and also giving it guardrails. Keep your response to 3 sentences. That's a basic framework, 4-part framework. But I recently heard a speaker, Todd McLeese, talk about some prompt advice that I've never heard, and I've been trying it, and I've been really impressed with the results. One is to be nice and polite. Always, when you're engaging with the chatbot, to interact in a polite way, say please and thank you. The second is to ask it to help you and collaborate with you and join you. That can help get you better responses. And the third part was telling the bot to take its time to really help provide you with an effective response. So I've been trying those 3 things. I always forget to tell it to take its time. But the other 2 I've been remembering to do, and I have found that the results, it's just a better experience, and hopefully it'll help me be more polite outside of the chatbot experience as well.
Wow, it's fascinating. Why? Why would that, any ideas on why that would be more effective?
Because it's more effective with humans, and AI or LLMs are fundamentally built on human data and human conversations. And when we're polite to each other, you typically get a better outcome. And when we're not polite to each other, we maybe get a worse outcome. And when it comes to telling it to give you more time, LLMs in their generative capacity was actually kind of figured out by mistake. The code had been run and processing, and it was sort of an accident that the code was left running for a longer amount of time that allowed for the generative capacity to emerge. So generative capacity actually takes time, as it would with humans. So that's why asking it to take its time is probably more effective. My guesses.
That's great. I want to get into, there's been a couple questions and some discussion in the chat about the idea of AI kind of taking jobs, and the threat that AI might pose to the workforce. I'm going to read this and then I'll paste it into the chat in a minute. It's from a Fast Company article, but this is what it says. A recent report from the International Monetary Fund found that in advanced economies such as the United States, about 60% of jobs may be impacted by AI. Of those exposed, researchers estimate that half will become more productive thanks to AI. And for the other half, quote, AI applications may execute key tasks currently performed by humans, which could lower labor demand, leading to lower wages and reduced hiring. In most extreme cases, some of those jobs may disappear. And this is a different section of the same article. According to the IMF, International Monetary Fund, women are at most risk for the latter fate. The result can be interpreted to mean that women face both greater risks and greater opportunities. And I'll post that and along with the link to the article. Melissa, what are your thoughts on that?
This is a narrative I think you hear from a lot of different sources right now, so it's hard to not give it some validity. I personally, at this stage of so much changing so quickly and so much unknown, think it's more productive to focus on AI literacy rather than hypothetical AI displacement. And so encouraging folks to familiarize themselves with AI tools and think about them in new and creative ways in which they might enable them to do their work more efficiently, sure, but also more effectively, even if it's efficiency that frees up space to then do other things. I think it is inevitable that the emergence of this most recent wave of AI will change many jobs. But how, I think, is still to be determined. And I think rather than spending a lot of time worrying about possible scenarios. I encourage people to familiarize themselves with the tools available to them, to demystify them, and to feel engaged creatively about what's possible.
Tag on to that and just give that a good solid second. We definitely need to be curious at this point in time. The majority of the language in that article is conditional because we don't actually have data to prove a lot of what that would suggest. History would point us in a different direction. When women were confronted with typewriters, as opposed to men who looked at a typewriter in a different way, women sat down and started typing and got up to all kinds of productive things. I expect the same will be true. We'll hand out a tool, and I think all of us will approach it with curiosity, or who approach it with curiosity will make it do things that we never expected it could do. And I think approaching with curiosity and excitement is far more useful and productive in the end of the day than being fearful.
The way that I like to think about this is that AI isn't replacing jobs, it's offering them, but it's offering them to people who have durable skills like analytical thinking, critical thinking, problem-solving abilities, and the ability. I think the biggest danger is that people who use AI in a transactional way and they don't transform it. So transactional, what I mean by that is, and this we see a lot from the student point of view, they put a prompt in, they take the output, and then they submit the output. And some of us do this in the workplace too. We just ask for a prompt. Maybe we ask for a prompt on an outline to give a presentation, and we take that outline and we just present it as ours. When there's no transformation in that and it's just transactional, that's where things get really dangerous. And I think that is where you will be replaced if you're just doing it in a transactional way, because you can't compete about it, because you can't compete with it if the human aspects aren't there. So again, I don't think it's replacing jobs. I think it's offering them to people who can engage in critical thinking.
Here, Julie, which is here, and also a call for, let's make sure we're educating ourselves and our community to be really good AI users. But absolutely second that.
So I launched a poll. Mario, it looks like I'll give you a chance to respond. I just want to let people know that I launched a poll. The question was, which option below best describes how you feel about artificial intelligence? And the majority responded with curious. Coming in second was excited. Only 1% annoyed, but overall people were positive about it. 13% are concerned. I think that's fair. Mario, what were you going to say?
I was just going to actually come back to what Cole was talking about when he introduced himself, about how these technological advancements have occurred over the past century. I mean, think about industrial revolution and how did we as humans approach that advancement, right? We can't shy away from these things. We have to understand them. We have to collaborate with them. And I think that's essentially how AI can help us do our jobs more efficiently, more effectively. I don't think AI at this point in time, I don't think AI is going to take anyone's job. I don't think AI can do it without the touch of a human. There has to be some human component to the work that we do. Like I talked about earlier, we're evaluating Copilot. Copilot's not going to write something for me. It'll help me write it, but I still have to put myself in it. And that's important though, right? We don't want bots just sending messages out. There needs to be a human component to it. And I think it's important for us. I love that the majority of us are curious about it. We should be curious. We should learn and understand how AI is going to make an impact to our work. I think we owe it to the public. We owe it to the students. We owe it to the faculty to explore these new technologies in these areas and talk about it. Build communities of practice around it. We do want to create a team that will allow the campus community to talk about AI, talk about user stories, talk about where it's making an impact so that we can learn from each other.
What are our biggest obstacles when it comes to capitalizing on the potential for AI? And Cole, I'm going to at least start with you.
Real exciting here, data management. I mean, I hate to, it's so boring.
Well,
We have this magnificent thing that's coming toward us, and so much of it in the private sector, especially at the organizational level, is based on the training that we can provide it with data availability. Mario's mentioned Copilot. Copilot is, it's a mix between it's astonishing and it's horribly frustrating. I spent an hour yesterday trying to build just a single graph that I could have done by hand, but I wanted to see how Copilot would do it. So it took me almost an hour to learn how to ask Copilot appropriately how to manipulate my data inside of Excel. And that was after I made sure that document was stored in my OneDrive and not on my personal computer or another share. There are a lot of little pieces to this. And I think that the second biggest part is just the human factor piece. Each one of these models works slightly differently. Julie's recommendation of giving it context, a persona, being polite, all of those things are really important across the board. But each one of them have like little requirements that are different. And I think that that's going to be complicated for people to navigate, especially as we all know in these early adopter days, there are going to be dozens of these large language models, some based upon existing models, some brand new models. And each one of them are going to have slightly different rules of the road, slightly different areas of focus, slightly different outcomes. So just the understanding, and it's moving very quickly. And you asked, where do you go to learn these things? Right now, YouTube, the internet are really great places to understand this because they're not fixed texts, right? What's true today can be altered tonight and made true again tomorrow. So a lot of that is really important right now. It's very much like the early days of the internet. And if you remember, when that started to happen, we had all of these educational experiences that started to pop up in K-12. Many of you will remember things like internet scavenger hunts, and the rise of the terminology of digital literacy. We are adding new chapters daily to what it means to be a digital literate citizen, especially working in a knowledge factory like higher education, but as a citizen in general, with the terrifying ability for AI to generate news, for it to create moving images of people who aren't real people doing things that are designed to sow the seeds of distrust. And you're seeing it. You have to sit down and almost use 4 or 5 different news sources. It's even worse than the rise of social media in that way, because social media continues to be the superhighway that passes these along, but the ability to create a deep fake like that and have it in front of millions of people's eyes instantly is really scary. So I really think, you have data management on one hand, but then you have us as just the human factors piece of it that will take some time to understand. But even more importantly, it's going to take some time for the field to normalize around what becomes mainstream. Right now, we're all beta testers for the richest 8 people on the planet, is what really is going on. And so that's why I think my answer is boring, but I think that it's appropriate to think about these things in really the basics of what history's taught us about the rise of disruptive innovation, and the cycle to understanding that we must go through to be able to apply it in our everyday lives.
So it's not boring, and it allows a good segue into something that we should at least touch on. It's a topic that is, too huge to cover in the time remaining. But briefly, let's touch on the ethics of AI and some ethical issues that might come about because of AI. And Rainbow de Benedetto also raises the ethical question of the implications of the huge energy needs of AI processing. So what do you have to say about that?
You all might know that public trust in higher education as an institution has been steadily declining over the years. But in recent data polled by the American Association of Universities, AAU, which tends to be one of the leaders in providing this sort of public trust, public opinion data, there was a strong outlier in that the public is looking to higher education for leadership of ethics in AI. They do not trust the private sector. They feel like, if not higher ed, then who, to ensure that this doesn't go off the rails. And I found that to be very heartening of the role that really only higher education can still play, and more specifically, public research universities. So I think UT Austin is spending a lot of time and energy trying to lead in this space. And I'll mention, for those that might not be familiar, we have a pretty large cross-campus research collaboration called Good Systems that is bringing
Just
together.
drop that one into the chat. Put their link in the chat.
Great. So that is the primary focus of this massive institutional investment. I'll let others share more thoughts on that.
I think that AI is very seductive, in that when you first start using it, it can just feel like it's going to change your life. And it generally does that when you're a novice learner. And there's, the Dunnigan-Kruger effect, that we're unskilled and unaware of it. That's a cognitive science, learning science effect. I think that happens when you first start using AI, and that includes total lack of understanding around the ethical engagement. And I think it's important, AI or otherwise, we have to become the architects of our own ethical frameworks. And one of the ways that we can do that is to be more informed. And I love what Melissa is saying, that the world is sort of looking to higher ed institutions to lead that. But this is the number one thing that students want from their higher education institutions. National polls state that students want and expect their institutions to teach them the ethics of engaging with AI. They're not as interested in learning how to use AI because they're pretty fast at doing that on their own, but they do want help understanding how to engage ethically. One of the things that we've done from our office, and I shared this in the chat earlier, I'm happy to post it again, is we've put together a framework for engaging in AI responsible and AI forward learning. And we think that you need both. If you're too far on the responsible side, you're not engaging at all. And if you're too far on the forward side, then you're not engaging in that self-regulated or that self-directed ethical frameworks. And so I'll drop that in again, but finding that sweet spot between those two, that AI forward, AI responsible, is how I think we need to engage on an ethical standpoint.
One of the ethical things that we don't talk about very much, and maybe we should a bit more in higher ed, is as we educate people on these tools and how to use them and how to create them and how to sort of go forward with life, a good chunk of our students, particularly our graduate students, our international students, are coming from countries that may not have the resource sets that we have here in the United States, or that have completely different frameworks for understanding how AI lives and works and operates in their home country, and where they'll go to work after they leave the University of Texas. We say what starts here changes the world. Well, we have to be mindful that the world is made up of a lot of different resource sets and a lot of different access to resources. So one of the questions that was asked for was from an energy perspective, how can we be ethical about this? And it's a really good question that we are going to have to grapple with from a knowledge perspective, an energy perspective. Generative AI is a huge compute requirement that just burns through energy, but also huge compute resources are very limited, globally speaking. So there are lots of responsibility questions here that I don't have answers to, but that from an ethics perspective, I think we've largely kind of just left out there. When I talk about ethics, a lot of it's around data ethics, use ethics, copyright ethics, who owns the product when you're done with an AI process. but there's a whole other realm out there that I think we need to think very seriously about. And we're lucky that we're in a place that we can do that.
So I did another poll. The question was, how much of your job do you think artificial intelligence could do now or within the next 5 years? Vast majority, 87% said some of it. I'm going to follow it up with another one right away. But I do want to, we're starting to close in on our time here. And I want to make sure that we cover this next question, which is, Cole, you mentioned the fact that we're, a knowledge institution, and therefore we, have a particular stake in AI and how we use AI. But there's also kind of assumption that it's exclusive to knowledge workers or whatever you want to call them. But is that really the case? How can AI, or how do you foresee workers in physical trades like construction or carpentry or landscaping or maintenance being able to take advantage of AI either now or in the near future?
Well, I don't think it's science fiction to think that a plumber will come to your house with a mobile device and just point it at a plumbing fixture underneath your sink, and it will recognize the problem, and his truck will, or her truck will 3D print that part for you on site. It's those kinds of activities that I think, we want to talk about, the growing mistrust of higher education and the value of higher education. Well, this is not going to be a class warfare, a higher ed. Oh, look at that! There's AI in action for you.
Wonder what you did.
Put my hands up, and it blew up the sky. I think that what people need to realize is that this is going to become yet just another baseline skill that pretty much everybody's going to have to learn. It's not going to be the domain of higher education. The domain that knowledge workers will encounter will be the operational efficiencies that it can produce by understanding the data that your institution itself maintains from either recent past or historical. The ability to make predictions about four-year graduation rates and path to completions, and all of those are predicated on the right data. But in a general sense, the kinds of knowledge that that trades people use, or other people, those knowledge bases are available, will be made available, and you have to see that eventually all of those industries will revolutionize their businesses through the use of AI in one way or another. So while today it's very much of a feel of a have versus have-nots, and that's my biggest concern on our campus. Not the consumption of energy, et cetera. It's that I don't want a student or a faculty member or a staff member in one college having access to AI tools while a similar person across campus does not. And right now, licensing models, profit margins, investments, et cetera, are keeping that from being the case. You heard Mario talk about Copilot. It's an additional $30 per month per user. And that's not cheap when you start thinking about outfitting an entire department, let alone a 50,000 person student body. So in the short term, I'm very concerned about the widening digital divide that AI produces on a higher education campus because of the differentiated funding models that exist. But like anything else, you're going to have to learn it, just like you have to learn how to spell, how you have to learn how to read, how you have to learn how to do basic math, and basic digital literacy skills are necessary. I mean, very few people come to your home to do what you would consider non-knowledge worker type tasks that are performing those duties directed by their mobile phone or an internet connected tablet.
I launched the other poll that was sort of a companion to the first one, which was, if assured of job security, how much of your job would you like to be done by AI? Numbers were basically the same. Mario, Julie, I know you want to have some response on this. What do again, this is hosted by Learning Development, so we have a heavy stake in how AI is already affecting and has been affecting learning development and the development of people in the workplace. what are your thoughts? What are you seeing right now that has been really impactful and meaningful around the learning space?
So that's a great question, Emil, and I am really excited to learn where AI will make an impact. I think our partnership with Julie and the Office of Academic Technology and the Center for Teaching and Learning, and some of the work that we're doing and conversations we're having, solutions we're developing, I think that we're going to be able to start to better understand where AI will make an impact in the classroom. So TBD on that question. I think that we have an idea, but we're going to learn more as we evaluate AI, as we place it in the classroom. We don't even have a solution. We have very few solutions right now that are available enterprise-wide that will allow us to use FERPA data or research data in those solutions. So right now, what we're focused on is finding the right solution, putting that in place, and researching and evaluating those solutions and how they make an impact. That's our goal, right? That's the future state. Once we develop where those impacts are made, that's called ethical use, right? We're not just splattering AI all over the place. I think we want to be aware and thoughtful about where we're placing AI. We don't want negative experience in the classroom. We want a positive experience, one that moves the needle, one that removes barriers.
I think that like I said earlier, it is a little bit seductive because there's so many different things that you can do. But we have an overarching value proposition, and I think that's really guiding a lot of the work that we're doing. And that for teaching and learning, our overarching value proposition is all access for AI responsible, AI forward use for teaching and learning. It's not all access. It's all access for AI forward, AI responsible use for teaching and learning. And we've got 2 projects we've sort of gone all in on. Mario shared one. I also shared one in the chat. If anyone's interested, I can repaste that link. But we have a pilot right now where we're developing activities for, we have staff, faculty, and students developing generative AI activities. We're currently testing them into the generative AI bot within Grammarly, but they're activities that can be tested across different AI platforms. We're also developing lesson plans using Gen AI, and that could be a lesson plan that would be in an L&D space or in a classroom. So we'd be really excited to have more participants involved in that. And then Mario and Mario's office and the Office of Academic Affairs are deeply collaborating on developing AI tutors so that our faculty, and if you don't know what an AI tutor is, it's a custom GPT where a faculty member can train the AI. So I teach design pedagogy. I teach my students how to develop lesson plans. I can train the AI with my own perspective, my own subject matter knowledge, the custom GPT to use my work and my perspectives on that. And then the students can use that as a tutor, which basically extends my instructional presence and my students' cognitive presence beyond the hour that I have to meet with them in the classroom. Melissa's been involved in these conversations. Cole's been involved. Angela's been involved. These are really exciting points of action that we're using that overarching value proposition to direct our work and to kind of stay away from that seductive pull to sort of go out and go everywhere.
I have one question, and I'd like to hear in particular from Angela and then Melissa. I'd like to hear, well, first, I want to comment about learning in the workplace too. The things that we're really excited about is the ability to help people with their career development. So like in performance evaluations, AI will be able to really help people respond to performance evaluations, something they haven't really had a lot of help with, or even 360 assessments where people learn about leadership, where AI will really direct people where they can have the biggest impact for where they specifically want to go. So that just very, very briefly is what we're looking at. But the question is, it's everybody, but I want to make sure I hear from Angela and then Melissa. What are you most excited about with AI right now? Angela, in particular, your efforts. Your folks and folks in the ITS are doing incredible things with like Power Automate and really helping people process things automatically. But what else is going on that you're really excited about with AI?
Oh, I love that the like second response here. I love that the first one is AI curious and that the second one is AI experimental, because what I am most excited about is we do have, as Julie mentioned, we do have several, as Julie and Mario, Cole, as people have mentioned here today, we do have several experiments that we're trying out. So the Copilot is one. We're developing an AI tutor, that's another. And Julie's working with Grammarly. We have an AI research partner that should come online later in the summer. So we're getting tools up and ready that we're already trying to experiment with. So for everyone who said AI experimental, look to connect with us, because we do want to connect with you and talk about what your curiosities are, what your needs are, what you would like to do with AI. Emil, you just mentioned a few really good experiments that you all want to run. We're excited about running those experiments and really finding out what's going to help people build more capacity, reduce fear, and become sort of that AI forward, AI responsible audience that Julie talks about. That's what I'm most excited about.
As is indicative of the Year of AI and being at a top research university that is a place of learning and research and discovery and community, this is a really creative call to action for all of us. And we get to be thought partners and contributors to how this unfolds. So whether you want to sign up for one of the pilots that's been linked in the chat, or reach out to the Year of AI about an idea you have for an event, attend any one of the many, many, many activities happening across campus at any point, engage in some of the world leaders in AI ethics and policy, or law, or the technology. Being a part of a university at this point in time feels very momentous, and there's room for everyone to participate and contribute. So I would strongly encourage people to carve out time in your week to think about AI, figure out how you can get involved and join. And it makes me excited to be in higher ed at this moment.
I want to first thank the attendees who were super engaged and full of energy, which I love. This was way too short. I know you hear that a lot with these kind of events, but this was way too short. So hopefully we can do another version of this in the not too distant future. And then I also want to make sure, I want to thank all of our panelists. You were incredible. It's an overload of how much information you've had and the great vibrant discussion you've inspired and had here right now. Keep in touch with UTLD to make sure that you can spread the good news about AI and the Year of AI at UT Austin.